2 weeks ago, we asked the question, what would make you satisfied or at least less angry about the TCU season? And I got my exact wish. Oh, yeah, it's Locked On Horned Frogs. Play my music.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? I'm Darian Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, host of your favorite daily one-stop shop for everything TCU athletics. Monday through Friday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network in the country. But you know the show better as the Locked On Horned Frogs podcast. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day. You already know today's Wednesday, so I have Sarah Smith here with me from KCEN, breaking down everything TCU, including the Big 12 biggest winners and losers from the season finale. I'm excited about this, but Sarah, we asked a question 2 weeks ago. You and I discussed this question 2 weeks ago. What would make you satisfied about the TCU season? What would make you less angry is, I think, the way that we tried to twist it, because satisfaction is kind of difficult to come by because there was preseason expectations, but the pitchforks were out. People were ready to go out and go out in town and find Sonny Dykes. People were ready to have wholesale changes. And the question was, what could make you at least calmer? To me, and it's funny, I remember you saying perfection is too much to ask for. And you were right. Like that is too much to ask for. And then we ended up getting it. So, I guess shoot for the stars. You didn't have a pretty win versus Houston, but you did have a really good looking win versus Cincinnati. And in my book, that was enough for me to say, I'm calm. I'm still not satisfied with what I came into the season thinking would happen, but I'm pretty calm, and it stopped the storm. It stopped the chaos, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the success from the Houston win was maybe less so on the fact that we won, but more so on the fact that we spoiled Houston's try for the Big 12 championship, which was nice. I am just feeling so proud of this TCU team. I mean, I was flying home from Thanksgiving trying to watch the game on an airplane, and I was having to not celebrate so much because obviously there's people next to me sleeping and I'm in the window seat. So this is just exactly what I wanted to see out of this team in this last regular season game. Everything was perfect. I'm pretty sure there were no turnovers. That run game was on fire, that is something we have always talked about on this podcast, just really wanting TCU to lock in. And mind you, there was no Kevorian Barnes playing against Cincinnati. That was Jeremy Payne was flying around doing his thing. So I am really satisfied. I'm not 100%. I still think there might be a small question mark around Sonny Dykes, but I am really satisfied going into this bowl game, and I hope that TCU's phenomenal performance against Cincinnati can give them a good bowl game. Hopefully no more New Mexico Bowls. No shade to the New Mexico Bowl.
No, you said something I thought was interesting, and I do want to get back to Sonny in a second, because I do think that's an important conversation. And it's one we can't bring up enough. But one of the things you mentioned was that no turnovers. And it was such a good day that they almost had a turnover when Manjack fumbled that ball into the end zone. And it really felt like someone from Cincinnati should have gotten it. But Jordan Dwyer was able to fall on it. It just felt like it was one of those days where things were supposed to go right. Because that was a situation where we've seen before TCU gets down into the red zone and they throw an interception. I think they had like 2 of those in the first 3 games, one against SMU, one against North Carolina. I think they may have had one against Arizona State. It just felt like that was a bad place for turnovers. And they had kind of calmed that part of it down. They had turnovers elsewhere, but not in the red zone or in position as much. It felt like this one was just, okay, I knew things were going too perfect. And then it's like, oh, wow. Dwyer recovers it, and nothing can go wrong because you had no turnovers. I think that was the only time the ball hit the ground. I could be forgetting one, but that was out. That to me was key. 0 turnovers in this game, no interceptions, no fumbles, a really clean game from TCU, and also Jeremy Payne. We cannot speak about him enough tomorrow's episode, we'll talk about how the future is bright, about how he is the guy who can lead TCU into the future. And that was probably the biggest revelation, the most optimistic revelation, that Jeremy Payne could be your real starting running back moving forward. And they learned how to block. The Dykes.
I'm your Jeremy Payne stock now. I bought a little bit of Jeremy Payne stock last season, and now I'm fully there in him.
As you should be. I think we all are. I think we all should be. I don't think it's a fluke. I just think they need to make sure when they do the shuffling of the offensive line that they get the run blocking right again. Not trying to figure it out for the majority of the season. But when it comes to Sonny Dykes, it's interesting. I made a statement on Monday. Yeah, I think it was Monday's episode, in which I said Sonny Dykes is off the hot seat for now. I think he's not going to lose his job. That part of the seat is cool. But I do think that there is an elevated level of pressure on him going into next year. So the conversation you and I always had was, will he be here next year? I think he secured his future for next year.
Yeah.
If it was ever in jeopardy, I always try to give that disclaimer. I'm not so certain that TCU was ever going to move on from him. I'm not certain that TCU ever felt the way that many fans felt. But even if it was in jeopardy, I think he saved his job in the last 2 weeks. What I do not think he has done is certified himself as being the head coach in 2027. I think TCU is going to have to take a step up in 2026. You feel like that's fair, or am I still holding on to some of my past prejudices?
No, I think that's fair, and I feel like that's fair just because of kind of how like the middle chunk of the season went. Josh Hoover was making mistakes, and just things just weren't looking that optimistic for TCU. If you asked me maybe a month ago, do you think TCU would win these last 2 games? I probably would have said no, but now they did. And so we can see the elite coaching and dedication that the coaching staff can give. It's just we need that all season next season. I'm not sure TCU needs to have a better record next season. 9-3 at the bare minimum. Mm-hmm. I know staying the same as 8-4, that's a okay record, but you're not getting to any Big 12 championships with that. And I think that should be the next goal, is Big 12 championship. You get your auto bid to the college football playoff. Let's make another statement and prove to the world that we're not so fraudulent after what happened back in 2023.
Yeah, that was ugly. That follow-up. Oh, but what will it take for him to change people's opinions of him? Is it anything other than just winning 9 games, 10 games, making it to being in the conversation of Big 12 championship? Like, is there anything other than that you think can change the opinion of Sonny Dykes in many people's minds? And if you don't want to speak for everybody else, I'll ask you to speak simply for you. What does it take to change your mind on Sonny Dykes? Is it that 10-win Big 12 conversation that you mentioned just a second ago?
It is that, because I think Sonny Dykes knows and the team knows that they are capable of achieving that. And that is what everyone else also knows, that what TCU is capable of. Is just for some reason we're falling short. And I feel like a little bit right there, the locker room is getting a little, questionable. And going to the Big 12 championship, I think, will revive the fan base's faith in Sonny. And maybe that, yeah, I would say that. And because everyone talks about, people expected TCU to be in the Big 12 championship week 1 after their huge win against North Carolina, but then we kind of got into this little slump. So that is what it'll take for me, at least, to buy 100% back in to Sonny. Right now, I would say I'm like 80% bought back in.
And let me say something.
I loved what I saw against Cincinnati, and so that's a very clear showcase of what TCU can do when everything is clicking.
Yeah, and let me say that these 2 weeks did a lot for me. They did a lot for me, to the point where sometimes I almost feel bad having these conversations about him still being on the hot seat going into 2027.
Yeah.
Or, I say it's a temporary break. He gets to get off the chair for a little bit, but when he sits back down, it'll be hot again. I almost feel bad because, believe it or not, Sarah, that Houston win did something for me. Not because it looked the best, not because they had a perfect game, but because Sonny finally knocked off a ranked opponent. TCU finally knocked off a ranked opponent. And it was ugly. It didn't look great, but I think that was a tough game. And I think that sometimes tough games don't look great. Had that game happened in October, had that game happened in September, we would be talking about it much differently. But it had some of the same remnants of the issues we had in past games. I was proud that they were able to steady the course and they were able to come out with a victory. And then to follow it up with the Cincinnati game that, in my opinion, was the best game of the season. I liked it better than I liked the North Carolina win because North Carolina is just simply not good. They're just not a good team. I don't think that is I don't think that's even a win to mention outside of the Belichick aspect. Cincinnati is on a downward spiral or was on a downward spiral, but I still feel like you saw what they could be. I saw what North Carolina was all year, and they were never good. So I look at Cincinnati a little bit differently.
Yeah, I mean,
North Carolina.
Cincinnati played pretty well against TCU also. They only had like one turnover. I thought that it was going to be a closer score, but TCU was able to pull away and not let them creep up.
Yes.
Which is kind of what we saw against Baylor, which that was one of my biggest takeaways from their win is that they did not allow Cincinnati to kind of creep back in there and make it close. And
that killer instinct was probably the thing. I was okay with the Houston win, but you had to follow it up. It wasn't enough to just say, I'm in love. I love Sunday nights again. No, he had to follow it up, and he did. And you mentioning how they didn't let they didn't let Cincinnati creep back into the game the same way they did Baylor, showing that ability to keep extending the lead. Mm-hmm. It kind of leans into your stat of the week. So let's get into that because playing from quarter 1 to quarter 4 was something we wanted to see. We saw it. And now Sarah wants to break down the reward and the benefits of having that performance as we continue with Locked On Horned Frogs. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and FanDuel is the best place to make a little bit of money. I think that you know football. I think that you know basketball, or at least you think you do. And I'm sure that you want to make a little bit of extra cash. I'm sure you do. And you can have both of those things come together at FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, put down a $5 bet. If that $5 bet wins, you'll get $300 back in bonus bets to move across the app. And that's where it gets fun because now you're playing with house money. Now you're playing with a little bit of risk and a whole lot of reward because you put down a safe $5 bet that hit and you are able to move forward from there. So maybe you're talking about Dak Prescott. The Cowboys has been kind of picking it up lately. You're talking about the Mavericks. They not necessarily have been, or maybe you want to put some money down on TCU's upcoming bowl game. Whatever it is, all around the Metroplex, or maybe Detroit, not because they're part of the Metroplex, but because Cade Cunningham, Arlington native, is now running things in Detroit. Whatever you want to put some money down on, it's there for you. Just put down a $5 bet and get $300 back in bonus bets when that wins. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On Horned Frogs, I have Sarah Smith here with me. You like how I like to speak motivationally to him? I didn't say if it wins, when it wins, get $300 back in bonus bets. But, we've been waiting for this moment for a long time, Sarah. We've been sitting here waiting for the complete game from TCU, probably since that North Carolina matchup. Yeah. To keep your foot on the gas is something that we talked about for a long time. I've talked about it at length, so allow me to shut up and give her the floor for her stat of the week, which I think perfectly encapsulates that need and that necessity. Yeah, 100%. TCU, 544 total yards against Cincinnati. I mean, this offense I knew that it was there, that this was something TCU could achieve. And it finally was there. I think the scrappy win against Houston revived this team in a way and just allowed them to totally dominate. Another thing the main difference that really, really just got me excited was
just TCU's rushing game. And we had 52 total attempts, 238 rushing yards. And this is what I have been praying that Kendall Briles will start running the ball more. And my prayers were answered, because this is what happens when it works. Is that TCU has such a talented rushing game. Jeremy Payne leading the way, 26 carries, 174 yards, and 2 rushing touchdowns. I mean, it was just phenomenal. And not to mention, Josh Hoover had 4 passing touchdowns. Aaron McAllister leading that way with 101 yards, 8 receptions. Jordan Dwyer had 2 catches, had 2 touchdowns. I mean, it was perfect, and such a great way to end the season. And I never doubted that this wasn't there for TCU. I knew that it was there. They just needed the opportunity to show that. And so I hope that this is a trend that TCU can continue into the bowl game, to be like, hey, this performance is not a fluke. We can play all 4 quarters of football and dominate. And like I was just talking about in that opening segment, TCU didn't allow Cincinnati to creep back in the game. I thought that they sort of would. Brandon Sorsby is a phenomenal quarterback. He had 3 touchdowns, no interceptions himself. So it's very clear that Cincinnati's offense is able to, find routes, move the ball downfield. But TCU's defense clutched up, and the offense was able to keep scoring and really solidify their lead, which was, aside from the rushing game, the fact that TCU held Cincinnati back is one of my biggest takeaways, because we were just talking about the game against Baylor. They allowed the Bears to really creep back in there and make it close, to where you didn't know if Baylor was going to have this crazy play to win the game last minute, or, that was kind of up in the air. And so this whole game was just an absolute masterclass from TCU. And, it's games like this that kind of at least give me the expectation that this is what I'm going to see next season. So I'm hoping that that reigns true.
And I'll give you one more little stat, because you talked about them not coming back. You talk about the yardage in the run game. 8:42. 8 minutes and 42 seconds. That's how long that TCU held the ball at the end of the game. For over half of the quarter, they possessed the ball, and that's how they closed it out. I think that's important, because not every team can do that. And quite frankly, I don't think that TCU from the 8 weeks prior would have been able to do that. But they were able to do it by running the football effectively, running the football when everybody knew they would run the football. You threw the ball on first down, the first play of that drive, to Eric McAllister, and that was the last throw of the game. That was the last throw of the game. For the next 8 minutes, you just running it. You get to a 4th and 1. Everybody knows you're running the football. Everybody knows it, because you've had so much success that day. And it's one thing to succeed, and we should praise the success, but it's another thing to succeed when everybody knows what's coming. And I think that is even more impressive. So they did that on the 4th and 1 and got it. Just ran the football down their throat consistently. And to me, what a change of pace. You mentioned the 52 rushing attempts. You mentioned Kendall Briles running the ball more than he had. I've always told people, anybody who asks me, I say TCU's not that good at running the football, but more importantly, they don't really run the football often enough. That's the biggest issue to me, is that they don't run the ball enough. They did that in this game. And not just because they had a lead, they were run heavy early in the game. You've seen 22 carries from Jeremy Payne in the first maybe 2 quarters and some change. It was at some point in the 3rd quarter that they flipped that up. 22 carries out of Payne. That was, to me, the whole story. 238 of those yards were on the ground. That's a little less than half of the yards being rushing yards. In a 500-yard game, who predicted that? Like,
not me.
Who would have?
Not
me. Who would have? So it's one of those things where if you told me that TCU had 544 yards, if you told me that TCU set a season high in total yards, I would tell you that Josh Hoover probably had a 400-yard game. I would tell you that Josh Hoover probably threw for 4 or 5 touchdowns. Now, he did give you 4 touchdowns, but he didn't give you 400 yards, and that's because it was a balanced attack. Finally, you've seen a running game with Jeremy Payne going for 174 yards. If you told me a skill player had 174 yards, I'm telling you it's Eric McAllister. Like, this was just full of surprises, and the biggest surprise was the run game to me.
And it was a nice surprise and a good change of pace. Like you were just saying, it's like TCU never really tried in the rushing game. There would always be a few attempts that broke out for a nice gain. But this, I just feel like Kendall Wise really bought into trusting the offensive line and the running backs to make plays. And when it started working, he kind of like, okay, this is something we can change up the TCU offense with. And it was like, I have no criticism, because it was just exactly what I wanted, I wanted to see, and probably what everyone else wanted to see as well.
No criticism for Kendall Briles. Showing some love to Sonny.
Are happy that I'm not over here criticizing TCU. See, this is a game where I actually have great things to say. TCU gives me zero reason to be a negative Nancy on here, which is, I've been looking for this. I don't like talking bad about TCU football, but when they give me reasons to criticize them a little bit, I gotta explain that. But not today. Not today.
Does like to criticize Baylor, and we're going to do it as we continue with Locked on Horned Frogs. As we continue and wrap up today's episode of Locked on Horned Frogs, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. You may question her credentials based off of the fact that she has negative things to say about TCU. Maybe you don't. You shouldn't, because she's really just being honest and realistic 100% of the time. I was going to say 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10. We wouldn't have her on the show otherwise. But if you want to give her badge back, if you want to give her back her frog badge, just know there's nothing that Sarah Smith enjoys more than bashing Baylor. That's why we bring her on the show every week, because she's going to do it 3 out of 4 weeks in the month. And today is one of those 3. You say that they're the biggest loser in the Big 12. I'm curious on why you say that.
Yeah, there's been a lot of sad things happening around Baylor football right now. They lost their AD. They're keeping Aranda. I know people aren't very happy about that. But I think Baylor really needed to end their season on something positive, and that was winning out their last 2 games to achieve bowl eligibility, and they missed it. They're ending 5-7 with a loss against Houston. Houston was also coming off a loss against TCU, and I know there's 2 teams coming off a loss there, so it can kind of go either way. But that's a win that Baylor really, really needed and did not get. And, I mean, Baylor is a similar team to TCU. They have so much talent, yet it's not being executed right on the field. So, I feel a little bit bad for them. Baylor fans out there, if you're watching this for some reason, I feel bad for you. I do. I wanted you to get a bowl win so that would kind of boost morale, but unfortunately it didn't happen. And now Baylor's losing some of their recruits. In the Waco area, there's 2 4-star nationally ranked recruits that were committed to Baylor and actually flipped to Michigan and Texas. So that's a little bit of a problem for the Bears, and I'm sorry for y'all.
Yeah, I don't understand why they saved Aranda so early. I mean, if you're going to,
I don't think they were able to get rid of him because they don't have an athletic director at the moment. Like, I think if they did, I think they would have fired him. But I think there has to be an athletic director present for that to happen. At least that's what I was told.
Does Baylor not have an interim at the moment?
They do. So I guess, I don't know. I guess maybe they need to have like an actual solidified person, but I'm not too sure on the semantics of hiring and firing head coaches.
Yeah, that's strange. I still would have kept the announcement. I understand what you're saying, and maybe that is the reason on why he can't go anywhere. I probably would have kept the announcement, though. I wouldn't have announced it with 2 games left that he was staying, because now it looks even worse. You announce that Aranda is staying, and then you lose to Arizona immediately, and then you lose to Houston right after. It's like, So now you announce this guy that we really don't want to be here, that he's going to stay for next season, and then he loses 2 more games, and we can't even sit here and say maybe he'll get fired because you already agreed that he's going to be here. I don't know. Feels weird to me. Feels very strange to me, but is what it is. My biggest loser is a little bit bigger. It's a little bit more than just 1 week. Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State has failed to win a Big 12 game for the 2nd year in a row. They have lost every single Big 12 game. And this is crazy. They've lost every single Big 12 game since being in the Big 12 championship game. Like it's the craziest thing in the world to me. It doesn't make sense how you go from playing Texas. Yes, I know that Texas isn't even here anymore, but that tells you how long ago that Oklahoma State won a actual Big 12 game. But you go from playing Texas in the Big 12 championship to not winning a game in 2 years in the conference. They've won some out-of-conference games. Like this year, they beat UT Martin, FCS opponent. Last year, they won 3 games, all out of conference. But you've gone 0-9 back-to-back years. You have a new head coach in Eric Morris, local to this area, right? A UNC guy, Denton County. So it'll be interesting how the change in leadership sparks the Cowboys. But they're my biggest loser because all they did this year was lose, right? Like they didn't win any games.
It's not funny, but it is.
Like it's okay. We can laugh at people's pain, like Colorado has 1 win. Now, granted, their 1 win came against, who did it come against? They beat Iowa State. But like even Colorado has a win. West Virginia has 2. UCF has 2. Oklahoma State has no wins. No wins. That to me is absolutely criminal.
Yeah.
But let's get to more positivity. My biggest winner is Texas Tech in the sense that we're recording this Tuesday morning. I like to be transparent. I think last week somebody questioned why we didn't have more information about a Sonny Dykes quote. So let's be transparent about when we record. We are recording at 10:50 Central Standard Time, 10:50 a.m. Central Standard Time on Tuesday morning. The college football playoff rankings have not come out yet. But I kind of feel like Texas Tech has been in a position, especially with that Texas A&M loss, to where they could possibly lose the Big 12 championship and still make the playoffs. I would have to see how everything plays out, but that makes you such a winner. And we're going to talk about this on the Big 12 squad show. I'm going to make sure I bring it up. Texas Tech has an opportunity to where if they lose, they still make it as an at-large, and then you get 2 Big 12 teams in the college football playoffs. That is a huge deal to me.
TCU lost the Big 12 championship against Kansas State and still made it into the Big 12, into the CFP. So, and Texas Tech is a phenomenal team. I mean, you've got the 2 best teams going head-to-head in the Big 12 championship, which is why my biggest winner, the BYU Cougars. I think if they lost, it would have been Utah, the other great Utah team making it into the Big 12 championship. But great win from BYU. They, clobbered UCF by 20 points. I don't know. I feel like we kind of roles reverse. Usually I'm picking Texas Tech as my winner, but Utah's got some great football. I hope Utah isn't too discouraged about the Cougars making it, but 11-1, that's hard to do in any conference. Besides Ohio State, they still reign undefeated, which is insane. But I'm so ready for this Big 12 championship. I think this is going to be one of the greatest football games that we've seen all season out of the Big 12. I'm so excited.
I hope it's better than the first time these 2 teams faced off. I really do. Should be fun. Should be fun in Arlington. I'm an Arlington native, so shout out to the AMA. We'll be back tomorrow to talk. Well, I'll be back tomorrow to talk about Jeremy Payne. I'm pretty sure we're going to be talking about Payne in the future being bright on Thursday's episode. But in the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care. And we'll be talking about early signing day. That's what I was trying to remember. So we'll talk about Payne and early signing day. But in the meantime, in between time, until next time that we hear each other, family, take care. Stay blessed. Peace. I'll edit that.
Okay.